You did it.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. It's 2 p.m. and I'll call this Committee of the Whole meeting to order. It's Tuesday, January 21st, 2025, and we'll start with the land acknowledgement. So the City of Fort Saskatchewan is located on Treaty 6 territory in Métis Nation of Alberta, District 11. We recognize that we stand upon land that carries the footsteps of many Indigenous peoples, including the Neowak, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, Nakota Sioux, and Métis. The City honors the First Peoples of this land, is committed to fostering reconciliation through relationship building, knowledge gathering, and education. So as we have guests in our audience today, a few housekeeping announcements. Emergency exit is through the chamber doors and then exit to the front of the building. Muster point is at the south end of the parking lot, and washrooms are located in the main lobby. So I will move on to item 2.1, approval of minutes of October 15, 2024, Committee of the Whole meeting. Mayor Katcher.
Okay, I'll request approval of the minutes of the October 15th, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting as printed and circulated.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, you accept that motion and please cast your vote. Any errors or omissions? Yes, I knew I was forgetting something. Not seeing any? All right, so if there's any delegations in attendance of the meeting. Sorry. Oh, sorry, it's carried. The motion is carried unanimously. Second time doing this. Thanks for your patience. So if there's any delegations in the audience today, as I don't see, or I don't recognize all of your faces, you can speak to any of the items on the agenda today, and you'd have 5 minutes to speak. If anyone would like to come forward, and I don't see anyone. So we'll move on to our presentations. Item 4.1, Shell Scotford Annual Update. And with us today we have Paula Adams and Garrett Mattiotti, if you'd like to come forward.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm Erin Brush Duncan, Director of Economic Development here at the City of Fort Saskatchewan, and I'm pleased to welcome Paula Adams, Deputy General Manager, and Garrett Mattiotti with the Corporate Relations Advisor from Shell Scotford. Shell is a global leader in energy and petrochemicals with over a century of experience in Canada. Located just northeast of Fort Saskatchewan, the Scotford Complex showcases Shell's commitment to innovation and sustainability, featuring a bitumen upgrader, oil refinery, chemicals plant, and the Quest carbon capture and storage facility. Today, Paula and Garrett will provide council with an update on Shell Scotford's current projects, operations, and initiatives, including their new projects and their role in advancing cleaner energy solutions. Thanks so much.
So thank you to Mayor and Council for having us today, and Shell is really happy to be a part of the Fort Saskatchewan community, county, and continued, successful operations as well. So, so before we get,
Yeah. Oh, maybe a little.
Oh. Sorry about that. Perfect. So just a little quick, it's actually Paula Mitchell. I'm not Okay, so I'm the Deputy General Manager and Production Manager for the Scotford site, just about 10-15 minutes from here. I'll start with providing a little bit of background and on Scotford production. If you can proceed to the next slide, please. Just a little bit of background before the update here. So Scotford opened in 1984, about 40 years ago, with a refinery and a styrene plant. When it comes to a large refinery, we are viewed as quite still modern. And in fact, the refinery that opened in 1984 is still the second newest in North America. And we continue to invest and build in our facility. And in 2000, we started up a glycols plant. Shortly after that, in 2003, we added to our site an upgrader and then expanded it further in 2011. And so the upgrader takes bitumen and turns it into crude oils, and some of which is used as part of feedstock into our refinery sitting right at the same plant. If you think about it, every day, any given moment in time, about 100,000 people here fill up on gasoline that's directly from our plant. And over the sky in Western Canada, about a third of the jet fuel comes directly from Scotford as well. So why am I telling you all of that facts and number? And it's because it's to illustrate the importance of our people who live in the nearby community coming to work every day to run the facility in a very safe and reliable manner. And we do that to be able to provide the vital energy products that's required by our industry and our economy today. While running that competitive business is crucial for our operation, we also have to think about the future for us. And on this slide specifically, you'll see a number of focus areas that we are working on as we work to reduce emission in our operations for today and for the future as well as the energy demand shifts and changes. First, you'll see that Scotford is Canada's most energy efficient plant site. And why that's the case is by co-locating our asset together, we're able to share utilities, we're able to then share waste heat as well, making our emission reduction a significant portion of our business. To start with, the plant is also designed in a very energy efficient way. And we actually take about 65% of energy required by a large facility like that compared to other plants and refinery. And so, secondly, we invest in wind and solar energy. We have about a 5 megawatt solar farm for our chemicals plant. We also purchase solar from a nearby facility, 58 megawatt. We also have a power purchase agreement with a wind farm. So combined wind and solar, 50% of our energy for the refinery actually comes from very clean source. Third, we actually invest in carbon capture as well, which I'll go into a little bit more details at the next slide. And finally, Shell's approach is to take a very customer-centric approach. And so we work to deliver today's energy needs, but we're also shifting and changing based on what our customer needs from us. And so in terms of CCS and CO2 storage hub, Scotford is the home to Alberta's large-scale Quest carbon capture project. So the Quest actually started up in 2015, and from 2015 to now, we captured about 9 million tons of CO2. And so building on the success of Quest, we have now taken a final investment decision to a project called Polaris, as well as Atlas, which is the first phase. And so while QUEST is a CCS demonstration project, it captures about half of the total CO2 in our refinery and chemicals plant, in our upgrader plant. Polaris is set to capture 90%, over 90% of CO2 from our refinery and chemicals plant as well. And so this summer, that's the final investment decision that we took. The first phase of Atlas is set to capture the CO2 from Polaris project, but the second phase of Atlas is a joint partnership with ATCO. We're driving towards a Atlas storage hub, which is a subject of future investment, and we are looking to capture carbon from third parties for that project. So some of the upcoming Scotford activities, in terms of construction for both Polaris and Atlas, we kicked off last fall, and with both facilities scheduled to be operational by 2028. Work on Polaris, located at Scotford, is ongoing, and it will peak a labor force of about 400 people on site. In parallel, we continue to develop the Atlas Carbon Sequestration Hub and the connecting infrastructure from the plant site to the Atlas Hub, about 20 kilometers pipeline from the site. So to ensure the continued operations of our facilities, we must conduct and execute on turnarounds every single year. This coming year, we've got two turnarounds. One is our major, or we would call a mega turnaround in the industry. And for those not familiar with what a turnaround is, think of it as routine maintenance. We have to take the plant down to be able to maintain the plant, make sure that the safety, regulatory compliance, and reliability aspect of the plant is in good condition. The mega turnaround will peak labor at about 2,000 people in the spring of this year, and in the fall we have a smaller event which peaks about 500 people. And I want to leave you with the view of Polaris, a picture of Polaris being built. There's a lot of enthusiasm locally for CCS as well as globally. And it's really great to come to work for a site and in a community where we're putting actions to words in terms of emission reduction and CCS. And so in this picture, and on the next slide, you'll see some of the vessels that are currently, installed in the plant. This picture doesn't show it quite here. It's horizontal, but it's now been erected up vertically. So when you come up close, these are massive, large vessels. The column is about 71 meter, it can be as high as 71 meters high and about 350,000 kilograms. So you'll see the three columns here. The two here are the amine stripper and the boiler absorber column, fairly high and heavy as well. And so it was not an easy feat to do, but we're successfully executed that project. Scotford also takes pride in ourselves as being true community asset. We are always proud to support our community and organizations. So you'll see listed on the page here a number of organizations that we have supported over the years in terms of donations. So Women Building Future, Mental Health Foundation, some of the NATE Trades Program, University of Alberta, and certainly some of the regional community events as well. So with that, I'll end the update there and open it up for any questions.
Well, thank you for the presentation, for being here, Paula Mitchell. It's certainly an impressive operation out at Shell. I was driving through there in the middle of the night a few weeks ago, and I've got to say your plant site is lit up quite impressively with the LEDs you have on all of the towers. So it's quite a glowing compound at night. I'll go to some questions here now and chime back in myself in a bit. So, Councillor Blizzard.
Hi, thanks for your presentation. Lots of good information. So with the carbon capture and storage, and I can't remember what the numbers were, but you said so much has been put in there already. What's the capacity of that? Like, is it a long time, or is there all of a sudden in 10 years that's full? And
So for the Quest project and for Atlas as well, it's based on a 25-year regulatory timeline, but we believe there would be capacity after that. So it's really hard to quantify like what the capacity actually is. There's a lot that goes into that, but what we feel very confident is there's lots of capacity for emissions for a very long time.
Okay, and that's a gas that goes down, right? So,
It goes down in what's called like a supercritical liquid, which is
Oh,
essentially
okay.
compressed gas to almost a liquid form.
and it can stay down there forever. I guess when I first heard it, I'm like, okay, but some point it'll seep out. Is that this is a area that wouldn't have that?
No, one of the kind of real advantages of, and this is kind of across Western Canada, but when you look at it's called the Basal Cambrian Sands, where the CO2 is stored, and there's multiple rock seals. There's a salt layer that acts as a seal. There's a shale layer that acts as a seal. And so those are kind of in place to ensure that there isn't CO2 leakage in the future, and that it stays there
Yeah.
permanent.
Okay, great. And thanks for all you do and keep operating in our community. Well, next door.
Councillor Harris, I saw you on there. No? Okay. All right, we'll move to Councillor Abatoye.
Thank you very much for your presentation. So my first question is, what measures are put in place to ensure the long-term safety of this storage? Because I know you've kind of explained a little bit, but I imagine residents hearing about this, it's an amazing project because, of course, it's helping keep our environments more, friendly. But what kind of measures are being put in place to ensure long-term safety and integrity of the storage? Because it says permanent, and I'm not sure because I know that a presentation was done a few years prior to now. I'm not sure I heard that word permanent, so that's word just stuck to me when I read the presentation, and that might just be me. But I just want you to speak a little bit about the long-term safety measures that are being put in place for the storage, to ensure the storage and integrity of the...
Yeah, so we have what's called a measuring, monitoring, and verification plan, or MMV is how you'll often hear it referred to. This is required by the government, and there's a number of kind of sensors and different mechanisms that will allow us to see if any CO2 is leaking, and if that was the case, we would adjust our operations accordingly. So there's a lot in place. I'm not a real technical expert, so I can't tell you all the different geological kind of monitoring equipment we have, but there's just extensive it's called measuring, monitoring, and verification in place to ensure that CO2 doesn't seep or doesn't leak, and allows us to respond immediately if something does happen.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Leakage is, sorry, I'm just going to interject there
please.
for a second, but leakage is one thing, but there's also impact to movement, vibration, and all of that underground, and it can propagate and make its way up to the surface. And so we have monitoring, as per what Garrett is saying, that we get notified almost immediately, and it crosses a very, very small threshold before we get notified and then have to put an action plan in place to understand what's going on.
Okay, thank you for that. My second question is, I'm just thinking about the project and the magnitude of the projects you're doing. Are there any anticipated changes to local infrastructure? And I'm thinking things like water usage, energy demands, anything like that.
Can you repeat the question again?
I'm talking about the new projects. So construction begins when? What is the anticipated?
So Polaris
timeline?
has already begun in construction, both Polaris and Atlas Phase 1.
Okay.
And we are planning to start up in 2028. So these are massive projects that takes a long multi-year effort to integrate into the plant. So it's not a new plant. Essentially, it's not greenfield, it's brownfield. So it's tacking on to our current existing infrastructure right now. So we started construction last year and will continue until startup.
Just a small follow-up to that. And just feel free to say it or not if you don't. But I'm just wondering what the estimated project cost is, because I didn't see that in the presentation.
So the overall project cost, it's really difficult to say because it's part of the overall, essentially both Polaris and Atlas all together. So the estimate is actually nearly $1 billion. So you have to think about the estimate at different stages. At the start, the number is going to be much different than as you execute and throughout to be able to refine. At every stage in the project, the number actually changes based
Yeah.
on what we're able to mitigate in terms of risk in the project.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Aptway, and we'll go on to Mayor Koch.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to take you down a different road, and this one's probably more for Garrett. I do appreciate every time I go to Life in the Heartland and Shell is out there giving updates, and you have had a lot of updates on Polaris and what's happening on your site. With your investing in community, and I won't say our community, I know you pay your taxes to Strathcona County, and I know 20 some years ago you made a nice investment in the Dow Centennial Center to have the Shell Theater. So I guess my question would be, do you know how many employees you currently have living in Fort Saskatchewan, and what your recent community investment is, that if your employees are talking about your community investments, what they might be?
I can take that one.
Yeah.
Unless I don't know the number offhand as far as
Push your button.
Oh,
There.
sorry. I don't know the number offhand as far as the percentage of communities or percentage of employees in Fort Saskatchewan. It is quite high. It's a significant. I do know it's a significant portion of our staff, and I think we always continue to look at ways to invest in the community. Just before Christmas, through our Polaris project, the project team donated a fair number of, I think, toys and food hampers to, I believe it was the Fort Saskatchewan Multicultural Society. And I think we're always looking for other opportunities to invest in communities where our employees are and where we're located.
Okay. Do you have any grant programs right now where you're looking for maybe any kind of legacy investment? I got to ask these questions.
Yeah.
You're sitting right here.
And Paula, please jump in if you know better. I don't think we have any specific grant programs at Scotford kind of for this right now, but it's probably always something we can have a conversation about.
Okay. Great. I appreciate it. And as I said, over the years, you've done such great things in our community. We're always looking, because with so many industrial people living in our community, they really always appreciate it when they can say, my company has invested in this, or they're part of something. So if you know of any, give Paul a shout, and I'm sure he'd love to hear from you. We got lots of recreational things happening.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for those answers. We'll move on to Councillor Macon, and then I'll close with a few questions of my own.
Thank you for being here today. I just had one question, just to clarify something that you said. Do you have projects right now that are waiting on final investment decision, or you've already received final investment decision for what you've got in place?
We do have projects that are waiting for final investment decision. One in particular is what I mentioned, Atlas Phase 2. And Atlas Phase 2 is a continuation of the first phase. The first phase is to capture CO2 from Polaris directly from site. Phase 2 is essentially a storage hub where we actually work with other third parties to capture their CO2 as well. So it's much more expansive, and that's a subject for future investment decision.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
That was everything, Councillor Macon?
It
Okay,
is.
thank you for that. I just got a couple questions of my own. I see Councillor Kelly as well as on the list for round one. And if anybody has any further questions in round two, please feel free. My question has to do with the recent election in the U.S. and the looming tariffs that now we've heard about yesterday. I'm sure this could generate a lot of interesting discussion right now. But what measures is Shell kind of looking at or has in place to safeguard the integrity of your operation? But furthermore, how could this affect Shell and potentially the pass on to the consumer that we might see, because it looks like that's going to be happening fairly shortly here?
I can take this one really quick. So absolutely, we have been thinking about this since the first hint of it, and now that it's here and getting quite real, we have been doing a little bit of strategizing and preparing for the events that may take place. It's at a fairly high level right now in terms of planning with our senior leadership group and actually our commercial business group, and so there are plans in place that I can't share in full details, right? But we're looking at options in terms of internal, local to Canada, and to be able to maximize. And in some areas, I'm not going to lie, it will impact our operations. So that is something very real that we're continuing to work. But our main goal remains safe operations, maximize, our margin and where our products get to in a safe way. And we may need to look at other options, but that is the reality that we're living right now, and we're in the detailed, some of the, getting into the detailed planning stage for that. So there are contingency plans that we're working at.
Thank you for that answer. That's a great answer, and a lot is changing on this front right now. Can I ask what percentage of your product, your final products, are exported to the U.S.?
I don't know the exact number, and our rail and pipeline system in terms of, our products, which is our gasoline, jet fuel, and diesel, a significant portion stays in Canada. There's a portion that will get into the States. It's on the chemical side that is somewhat of an issue for us right now because that's where the market is. And so that impacts that part of our organization. It impacts both, but on the chemical side, it's more significant.
Interesting to know. Okay, and all the best with that. I'll move on to Councillor Kelly here. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, and thank you folks for your presentation today. Just a quick question, if you can answer it. When we get a new federal government, a new party in power, I expect there will be changes to the carbon taxation scheme that we currently have. If there are reductions in the carbon tax, will that affect your phase 2 of your current carbon capture project? Will there be any changes to that at all?
While I don't have, 100% answer on that, I think it will. And it's one of the reasons why we did not take that final investment decision at the same time. That project is still quite in early stages, Councillor. And so we're working the front end of development, and it may change. It may change the Atlas phase 2, but we're still working toward that plan and making that real. So I can't answer that question fully in terms of where that might end up.
Kind of what I expected, and thank you for the response.
All right, it looks like that's about it. I had one further small question. You mentioned that a lot of your energy comes from solar and wind. Where are those? Do you have solar on site? Or, I don't know. There's no wind there.
Yes, we have a 5 megawatt solar farm right next to our chemicals plant. So that one we run and own. We are receiving solar power from another site nearby. That's about 58 megawatt. And then also in a power agreement with another wind farm of 50 megawatts. So one is nearby, one is on site, and the others are nearby.
Excellent. Good to know. Well, thank you for being here today, Paula and Garrett. We always appreciate having Shell, as we only get a yearly update from you. So looking forward to the influx of people here. I think with the Dow expansion starting this spring, we have 5,000 more workers coming in, and that'll align nicely with your larger shutdown. So the landscape and the busyness around Fort Saskatchewan is certainly going to be felt. So appreciate your time here.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having us.
Right, and you're required to stay for the rest of the meeting, I think, is but yeah. All right, so next up, item number 4.2, we have the Military Family Resource Center presentation. This is, you can introduce yourself, but this is Rosa Parlin. Welcome to a council meeting today. I don't think we have anybody presenting you, so. You'll have to push the button up front. There you go.
Perfect. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is Rosa Parlin. I'm the Executive Director at the Edmonton Military Family Resource Center. Thank you for having me speak to you today about the work we do to provide essential programs and services to support military and veteran families in the Capital Region. The Edmonton Military Family Resource Center is a charitable nonprofit organization governed by a volunteer board of directors that is made up of at least 51% of active serving family members. We are the only local charitable nonprofit organization that's nationally mandated to be the frontline service provider for military families. And we do that work by implementing the Military Family Service Program, which outlines specific supports and outcomes that MFRCs are to provide to military and veteran families. As you may know, military life presents unique challenges, and our mission is to help military families navigate these challenges by enhancing their strength and resilience. When families are strong, Canadian Armed Forces can focus on the mission at hand, which is why we call ourselves the strength behind the uniform. For 35 years, the MFRC has been committed to enhancing the lives of individual families of Canadian Armed Force members through positive action, education, and support. Absences from family social support, difficulties during deployment, solo parenting, or coping with an injury or loss are realities for military families. Realities that can have a significant impact on family well-being. Qualified staff from a variety of backgrounds direct and coordinate military MFRC programs and services. Who we serve. MFRCs are here to support anyone of significance of the military member. That may be a spouse, a girlfriend, a boyfriend, partner, parents, children, or really good friends. We also serve a broad range of military families, from regular force, reserve force, and of course, veteran families as well. Some of the unique challenges of military life, which the MFRC is partially funded to implement, focus on 3 unique challenges. Relocation, so moving and settling into a new community. Absences, support before, during, or after a member is away for a work-related absence. And transitions, moving to civilian life and becoming a veteran family. For each area, the MFRC offers programs and services that help families navigate these challenges, and families navigate into community programs and services that meet their individual needs. In Edmonton, we provide programs and services in mental health and wellness, deployment support, community integration and outreach, relocation to support to families as they move from one location to another, child and youth programs and support services, and preventative workshops and programs. Helping families relocate. In Edmonton, we see approximately 1,000 new members that get posted in each year. Military members move often to a wide range of training and experiences. In a survey, military spouses, over half had relocated 1 to 3 times due to postings, while just over 20% have relocated 4 or more times. Frequent moves can be very difficult for families. MFRC has family navigators who provide local context and information as families find new homes, jobs, doctors, schools, and local resources, and help them navigate complex help, such as supports for dependents with special needs or learning a new language. This fall, the MFRC received over 3,000 phone calls and walk-ins from military and veteran families requesting support, information, and assistance in all of these areas. We provide military members and families with nearly 500 welcome packages. That includes for single members, family, youth, and pets, if they don't have children. We also provide programs and navigational support to Francophone families, which is certainly increasing in the Alberta area, as well as families with special needs. Our language training courses this past fall had 39 people registered for English or French language training. We also provide employment, education, and training for military spouses and partners who have had to relocate and need support updating their resumes or training to be equatable in Alberta. From July to September, we assisted 30 clients with employment referral services. We believe families who are settled and connected within their new communities are better able to manage the other challenges military life offers, particularly during absences. Speaking of absences, helping families through absences. On average, military members spend 1/4 of their time away from home on military-related duties. That includes training, courses, military exercises, and of course, overseas deployments. Time away can last a few weeks, several months, and up to 6 months generally. Military members don't have control over most of their periods of separation from their families. MFRC helps families prepare for absences, manage challenges while their loved ones are away, and return to routine once the military member returns home. We offer services like a readiness binder to help families prepare and plan ahead, keep in touch emails while the member's away, and calls that let families know the support that is available if they need it. We also provide group sessions for families to come together and support each other. We do a number of programs, including an OP Coffee, which is a peer support program for family members who are experiencing a work-related absence, as well as pre- and post-deployment readiness workshops. Each absence is different, as is the family's needs, so our family navigators are able to help link families to resources and services that meet their unique needs. From July to September, we provided almost 200 check-in calls, emails, and navigational assistance to families. This year, we are heavily focused on deployment support as the operational tempo is very high for Edmonton. From July to September, our center had 425 military members register for deployment services for their families. We delivered 13 unit briefs to more than 1,000 soldiers who were preparing to leave for overseas deployments. And of course, we will be starting that again in the spring as we have more getting ready to leave. Helping families transition. Of course, another big milestone for military families is when a military member transitions from active duty to veteran status. This is a complex process for the member and their families, especially if the transition is due to an illness or a loss. The MFRC supports medically releasing CAF members, veterans, and their family through the Veteran Family Program by helping ease the transition through enhanced information and referral services with the goal of having them transition successfully into the civilian lifestyle. Mental health and wellness is one of our bigger areas. Of course, as family cope with stresses related to relocation, absence, and transition, they can experience points where extra support is needed. This is where our mental health and wellness team come in. Everyone's needs are different, so they do an intake process to understand the family's needs and will link them to military and community resources. The team also offers confidential short-term counseling and crisis support for military family members with immediate intake and no wait list, which is huge. From July to September of this year, our 3 mental health and wellness staff members provided over 1,200 hours of direct client care to military and veteran families, predominantly for youth at that time. We are also able to help support with short-term emergency support through Emergency Family Care Assistance. This is something for military members and their families if the need arises and they have no backup plan and it is a crisis. In the past quarter, our team helped families qualify and receive 400 hours of emergency family child care assistance for 11 children. Some of the special workshops and programs that the team does include a mom support group, mindfulness coaching, coping skills boot camp for youth, and our newest one coming up is iStep, so individual strength through empowering peers for children and youth who have a parent with an operational stress injury. Military family community. On top of all our services, many of our events and programs exist to help connect families with each other. We provide opportunities for families to meet others and build their social networks and help them integrate into their community. Some of our programs and events focus specifically on peer support and community integration to meet these families' needs. We had over 1,500 attend our community integration and outreach events over the summer months. Our youth and parented programs provide activities for healthy child and youth development. From July to September, nearly 400 individuals attended youth programs, parent-child programs, and workshops. 63 youth attended our youth drop-in programs on the weekends and during summer months. One of the ways we ask people, as yourself, as council, is really if you're seeing and connecting with military families and they maybe have some questions and don't know where to go, really just to refer to the MFRC and we will help connect them where they need. That would include connecting into your local community. MFRCs do not duplicate services. Our role is really about those unique needs. So our teams are out linking with all the community resources and making sure we're connecting families back into that. Funding. Just to give you an idea of our funding, we are funded through 4 separate but equally important sources. We do get some funding from the base commander, military family services, program fees, and of course fund development. 10% of our annual operating budget comes from the base commander, and this is to provide very site-specific services for Edmonton and the community and enhanced mandated services. The military and family services provides 50% of our operational budget, and this is to provide the military and veteran family support program. We are anticipating, due to D&D budget cuts and everything happening with D&D, about a 10 to 20% cut is what we're being told. So we will see how that impacts coming into the new fiscal year. 25% of our annual operating budget comes from provincial funding, as well as fees collected directly from families, and those are things such as our daycare, our play school programs. And 15% of our annual operating fund comes from funds raised through fund development, events, donations, and sponsorship. This fiscal year, over 117,000 of our donated funds are going to children, youth, and family programs. 112,000 to welcome, outreach, and community integration programs, 27,000 to deployment support, and 33,000 to mental health and wellness. Thank you very much. Sorry, there's usually 2 of us to kind of offset that. But any questions?
Well, thank you for being here today, Rosa. I'm certainly a comprehensive report that you brought back to us. I think you're familiar with Councillor Abatoye. I think we're proud to have her on Edmonton Salutes, so make acquaintances there. Just a quick question before I move on to the other questions that are up here. Do you know roughly the number of active duty military that we have in Fort Saskatchewan by chance? I know that's a specific question, and it's probably some data that exists somewhere.
I would love to have that data. We do not. We actually have no idea the breakout of where our military members live. We do know there's 5,000 military members posted to CFB Edmonton, 3,000 families. and a lot are living north. They're coming into Fort Saskatchewan, Gibbons, Sturge, all of those areas, but we don't have a very specific number, unfortunately.
That's fair enough. I know quite a few of them live in Fort Saskatchewan, and that's
They do, as well as a lot will retire. Mm-hmm. We see a lot of them retiring into Fort Saskatchewan. With that 1,000 that are new coming in, certainly one of the questions is, where are we looking to buy? So a lot of times a military member will get a house hunting trip, come in early. They'll usually, ideally, stop in at the MFRC, so then we can just advise them of, what the areas are around, give them any information and a welcome package.
Well, excellent. Yeah, great work that you're doing. All right, Councillor Harris, go ahead.
Rosa, is your program a legacy program that has existed in the military context for a long time, or is it a relatively new program that you're administering?
So we've been around since 1990 is when we first incorporated. So the Military Family Services, it's called under different names depending on where it fell out. But for our MFRC, we've been around since 1990.
So if a member goes to Petawawa or another military institution in Canada, would there be a similar kind of program offering these types of supports to families in those areas, for example?
Absolutely. So Military Family Services provides funding for MFRCs to exist on pretty much all of the bases. We may look a little different because we are very specific to what the local needs are. However, we are all required to provide absence, relocation, and transition, and those mental health pieces, that's critical for it. As well, all of the MFRCs are in that same, we don't duplicate services. It's really about connecting with community partners.
So it's a recognition of the challenging work that military officials and personnel take on.
Absolutely. There's 32 MFRCs across Canada, as well as out of country as well.
Good. So there's some consistency in that regard in terms of if I move from one base to another base and I need those, I know where to look.
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Harris. Move on to Councillor Blizzard. 1 second. Go ahead.
Thanks for all the information. There's a lot of information in there that's very interesting. And I think I heard you say that this isn't dependent on, they don't have to live on the base. This is for anyone, right? So you said there's 5,000 members in this area. Is that a number that's gone up as our population goes up? Shouldn't the military increase? I know you won't know that, but it just... That stays kind of consistent?
I would say it stays consistent unless the base itself changes. Okay. So if you hear Suffield, for instance, had changed because their British military moved out. So their base number may change, but generally it's been 5,000 for years.
Okay. And I guess the funding to me would be a concern. You were saying about cuts. But in the meantime, costs have gone up, whether it's wages, whether it's supplies, whatever you need. Is funding from the federal government, from all these, mostly consistent?
That's such a great question. So as a large MFRC, we certainly have never been fully funded and continue to be short from the federal government. So fund development dollars, usually $400,000 to $500,000. If we don't get those, then we have to look at cuts. When we look at a 10 to 20% cut, it's certainly something that our board has to look at to see what is to do the minimum impact, but knowing there may be that. So when we look at priorities, deployment support, mental health, those are kind of our real heavy focus because of what we do, but certainly hoping they don't cut us to those extremes. But I do believe we'll at least get 10 to 15. Yeah. So we will.
You mentioned about something budget cut. I didn't quite catch what that is.
So nationally through Military Family Services, so they're the ones who are our program funders, managers for the Military Family Service program. Having said that, they only fund us about 50% of our funding, but it's why MFRCs exist. They are looking at and telling us a 10 to 20% cut this coming fiscal year. So, and again, in line with D&D because they have such a huge cut, and then we don't know what that'll look like with the new government.
DND, is that what you said? I couldn't
Yes, sorry,
quite-
Department of National Defense, yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, and I got just one more.
Go ahead, yeah.
Okay. Oh, Brian's up. So you help the families a lot. Are there doctors on the base, or do families go off base, and do you help them? Because across the country, that's a huge issue, right?
Absolutely. So there is no medical facilities on base. So again, linking into those local communities, we will refer to the college because we cannot refer to an individual doctor, but it is going back into local communities. Mental health, healthcare, all of those are going back into the local communities. Family doctor, huge dissatisfier for military families. They have nationally done some support with some virtual for military families that's funded nationally, but it really is very limited for new families that are coming in.
I think that would be a big challenge when families move.
A huge challenge, as well as special needs, because again, you're going on or childcare.
Yeah.
You pick it, and there are all those national shortfalls.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. You're painting a great picture, I think, of the work you do and the challenges that are experienced by military members. Councillor Abatoye, I accidentally clicked you off. Can you just hit your button again? And then Councillor Kelly would be after. Thanks.
Thank you for your presentation, Rosa. That was really good. I know that there is an increasing number of military families in our city, especially because I'm in real estate and I had 2 clients last month that bought. So I know that there's going to be more military families moving to this community. So I thought this presentation was very important. But more so, you said in your presentation that you got 3,000 calls. Was it this year, as in 2025, or 2024?
2024.
2024, okay. Because I was
So July, like we did when we did the presentation in the numbers, we did like from July till September.
Okay, all right, thank you. So I mean, one of the reasons why you had talked about doing a presentation before council was to create awareness of your services.
Absolutely.
But I'm also thinking, like, how many staff do you have? Do you have enough resources to be able to meet all the needs of these military families that move in to this region?
Well, that's a great question. Do we have to continue what we are offering? Yes, we do. To expand, or if the needs increase, we would then look at, do we need new staff? We have looked at just temporarily.
What do you have, if you don't mind me asking?
Sure. On an average payroll, keeping in mind we have daycares and play school, we have 45 staff.
Okay.
We have just looked at getting a temporary deployment support assistant because, again, realizing it's quite a lot of work. So increasing that where we can, depending on funding.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Rosa. Just my second and final question. Maybe 2 more. Sorry. Mental health. You said that there's no wait list on that service, and I think that's very impressive, right? So, again, just coming back to your resources and what you have and the number of requests you probably get, how are you able to handle that and get to that no wait lists level? Because I think that's very important, because you want to be there when they need the help.
Absolutely. So the biggest thing when we talk of, we do crisis intervention, so we do no long-term therapy, which actually allows it. We have about 5 mental health professionals. They all take turns doing that intake. But a lot of it, what we wind up doing is referring out. So referring out to those communities, or it's very short term and we'll see a family maybe 3 times. And then 3 years later, we'll see them again. So really just kind of meeting where they're at and then going forward. We're very lucky to not have a wait list. We are seeing that increasing, but having somebody on intake and able to see somebody immediately is huge for our team.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And just my final question, Mr. Chair, is that okay?
That's okay. We just have Councillor Kelly on after you. So
Thank you very much. And just my final question is just around collaboration with like schools and, Legion businesses. Do you have any synergies between these organizations?
Everywhere we can, we love to. So schools are really critical. There's some really good resources that are for, say, guidance counselors and that. We do have a staff member who reaches out, but it's all about if they want us to come in. We do PD sessions. Obviously, those schools with high military families, they connect quite a bit. What we try and get is the one that has not as many military families, because there are resources that they can use, again, especially with special needs, supports that the school might not have to use their funding. They can use where we're able to access. So one of the things, if you have contacts, absolutely great to have, or really just encouraging those groups. Hey, have you connected with the MFRCs? Just to see, we do as we can. Again, they really are working to try and get a better, broader.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate your presentation. Thank you for being here.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Abitoye. We'll move on to Councillor Kelly. Go ahead.
Thank you. And nice to see you, Rosa. Thank you for the report. I'm curious, the MFRC program, is that mandated by the federal government or the Department of National Defense? How is it the program came into existence? And could you speak to that for a second, please?
Absolutely. So it is mandated by Military Family Services on behalf of the Department of National Defense. So they will say to MFRCs, you must do these program areas, and can be quite restrictive on what an MFRC can do. That's where some of the additional funding, for instance, when I said our base commander fund site specific, MFRCs will find other sources of funding. So nationally, childcare, other than emergency family care assistant, is not something MFRCs are mandated to do. We have a daycare on base. Our base commanders help support that, but we have no mandate for childcare. So those types of things are a little bit interesting and really are at those local levels.
Rosa, thank you, because your answer did touch on my next question. Oh, and just, it's a bit odd in your chair, but look straight forward, because the camera that I'm looking at you at comes straight over the chair's head, and just help you out as well. So, because I wanted to delve into what I perceive to be a shortfall in your funding, and if I can paraphrase your comments and then you elaborate, please. The official mandate for MFRCs is narrower than typically what the individual organizations take on. And that is primarily, and I'm looking for confirmation, primarily the reason for the funding shortfall from the Department of National Defense, or something else? Please elaborate.
Well, that's a great question. I would say the shortfall nationally exists just because there's not enough funding allocated to military families through Military Family Services. We've been shorted for years. We're, again, lucky as a larger MFRC. Our needs of our families certainly expand, so we expand to that. As I say, when you look at our mental health and wellness program, which is critical and does meet that mandated need, we still need to fundraise this current year $33,000 just to support that team, which would include keeping those staff that we have. So I believe there's just not enough funding for it. But then when you look at those things such as childcare, youth and teen programs, so like a youth center, it is not funded. It is not a mandated program. Those are things MFRCs would then take on based on the local needs.
Okay, thank you. Do you receive any funding from the City of Fort Saskatchewan?
I know we have in the past, and I know so many of you have come to our Yellow Ribbon Gala. The actual amount we would have gotten this fiscal year, I would have to check, but I do know we've seen you at our gala. I could get back to you on what the amount was, but...
I guess what I'm suggesting is that if there's Fort Saskatchewan specific programs or programs that you think benefit the citizens of Fort Saskatchewan, then I would encourage you to talk to our staff and work with them if and when necessary. Just one last comment. you're talking about a cut in your funding, and I truly hope it doesn't happen. I do suspect, based on the pushing that's coming from south of the Canadian border, that we're going to see Canada's military spending increase over the next half a dozen years. So maybe there's greener pastures on the horizon. Let's wait and see what happens, I guess. And appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Councillor Kelly. Maybe for the next round of questions, I don't know if you can move closer to your microphone or turn up the microphone intake volume, but it's a little bit difficult to hear you, just the volume. We'll go on to Mayor Katcher, and then I have a couple small questions on close here. Oops. Suppose that's important. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And yes, I have attended, along with my husband Wayne, many of your Yellow Ribbon Galas and supported you wholeheartedly at those as the mayor. And it's always really nice to see how so many of the regional mayors come together, and it's a very emotional evening because we really get to hear about the FRC and see what a difference that it makes. So, I think if there's other fundraising opportunities that are available, be sure to let us know. I know as far back as Mayor Hodgins, he used to also attend when you had fundraising opportunities too. And when I became the mayor, he says, make sure you go when they invite you. So, whether you would fall into any of our community grants or not, I don't know, but it is an opportunity that you could look at as well, depending on how many military families that we have in the fort. And also our Fort Saskatchewan Legion is another area that, really supports our military and families. And I know they would like to have more showing up at the Legion as well if they need any kind of support or coming in for camaraderie. So, but I do thank you very much for what your organization offers these families. I know it's very stressful, and I just know that, even when I go to the Remembrance Day ceremonies, our schools are really taking a higher level of interest and consciousness about how many students are there that have families that are in the military. And I know there was a big deployment right after Remembrance Day, so it was a very emotional time. And I don't envy your job, because it's very hard having your family separated for that long period of time and what they're going through. So I just want to say thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Yeah, very, very well said, Mayor Katcher. Just a couple questions, kind of offshoot of comments that you made. So there's several military family resource centers. Are you the only entity within the Edmonton area okay, so it's basically there's regional jurisdiction, and then, but it's not a by province kind of umbrella organization or something. I'm just trying to, get the structure figured out.
Sure. No, each of us are independent, provincially incorporated. So in Alberta, we have Cold Lake has their own MFRC, Calgary, and they also look after Red Deer, and Suffield has an MFRC, and I think that's it. I think there's but you named all of them. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for that information. Then, just further to the funding topic, then, military spending is correlated with the type of federal government that we have in. So, if there was a conservative government in next, would you be anticipating more funding opportunities? You alluded to that, but not specific question. But is that something that could change the scope or the dynamic of your organization? It could, because again, depending on where the federal government lands on how the support is for military spending, I'm still not convinced. Even if they give more, I think it will go to military spending, not to military family spending.
Okay,
that
interesting.
Makes sense, because there is only so much. I'm not convinced they'll be a huge, they have such a deficit that they've had to cut over the next number of years. Be lovely if they didn't have to, but we shall see.
Fair enough, right? And you'll have to see when the time comes. All right. Thank you for all the work that you do. Once again, I can't say it any better than our mayor has. So I appreciate you being here and for your time today, and continue the great work. It's obviously impacting and changing lives of those in the military for the better.
Well, thank you so much for having us. Sorry, I know it's a lot of information, but it was lovely to see you all.
Yeah. Keep it up.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much. Did anybody want to recess for a comfort break? Or I think Sadie's only going to be about 6 minutes. So all right. Yeah. We'll take a 5-minute recess at this point. Then we'll be back at, well, actually, let's take a 6-7 minutes. So we'll be back at 3:10. All right, we're good. Welcome back, everyone. So we'll move on to item number 5, the waste audit review, and welcome our resident garbage experts, Sadie Miller and Sophie Ango, if that's how you pronounce it. All right, take it away.
Good afternoon, Chair and Councillors. My name is Sadie Miller, Director of the Utilities and Sustainability Department. And with me today for the first time is Sophie Ango, the city's Waste Program Supervisor. I'm going to pass things right to Sophie to present an overview of the results of our 2024 waste audit.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Before I get started, I'd like to ask you all a question. What do all of these have in common? The answer is that they were all very, very, very stinky. On May 14, Administration and Youth Council tackled a series of waste audits with our consultant, Core Environmental. Before we dive deeper, I would like to visually show you the efforts that we went through to gather the data that I'll be talking about today. So what we're doing today is we're doing a waste audit. It's basically a waste composition study, and we're looking at the 3 different streams, organics, garbage, recycling, to see what each stream is comprised of. The last one we did was in 2018 after we introduced the CART program, and we basically wanted to determine our baseline and understand how residents in the fort are sorting their waste, and if they're even sorting, what the participation is like. And so because it's been some time now, we wanted to do a follow-up. The value for a waste audit is to allow us to streamline our communication methods. I can easily go out into the public and start talking about things that I think are happening in the program, but we won't know until we actually dig deep into the bags and understand what the waste issue is and what the problematic items are. It's really important for us to audit the garbage stream because ultimately we're trying to reduce waste. And we don't know what the garbage stream is being comprised of until we dig into it. And what we're finding right now is there's actually a lot of organic material in there that could be diverted. There's also a lot of recyclable materials that could be diverted. So this tells me then that the residents need more education and need more information on how to properly sort their garbage so that they reduce their waste, but ultimately increase their recycling and their organics, which is what we want. Today we're auditing the recycling stream as well, just to see what kind of contamination items that we're finding in there. Sometimes there's contamination in terms of liquids that are being put in there, and that's very problematic for us because then it ruins the entire recycling batch. And so then it undermines everyone's recycling efforts because that entire batch now is going to go to landfill. So there are other contamination materials that we're trying to see and find opportunities to communicate to the residents as well, such as electronics. Electronics does not belong there, and oftentimes it can cause fires in the trucks and in the bins and at the recycling facilities as well. Any sort of wires we're trying to avoid being in there. So we're really trying to understand what kind of materials are we finding so that we can better inform the residents. It's really important for us to properly sort our organics because if there are any sort of contaminated items in there, like today we saw black garbage bags, we saw toys. When there's contaminated items in there, it affects the quality of the compost, and the compost eventually ends up on farmlands, which grow our food. And so if we're putting contaminated soil or compost onto our farmlands, then we're essentially eating back those contaminants. So it's very important to keep in mind that when we're putting things in our organic bins, those things are also coming back to our community. I'd like to also thank the residents of Fort Saskatchewan for sorting their waste properly. Especially today and yesterday, we found that the recycling stream was pretty clean, which I was really impressed about. And so I want to mention that your efforts are being recognized and they're definitely making a difference.
This audit went really well and we were really pleased to be a part of it. My biggest tip for the residents of Fort Saskatchewan is to separate your food from your food containers. Scoop them out in your kitchen, and that way when we get them at the recycling facility, we can recycle both the containers and the source separated organics.
As we're wrapping up this waste audit, as you saw, this was quite laborious work. I want to thank all of our partners for supporting us in this amazing project, specifically Core Environmental, Integrity Waste Solutions, and GFL. Thank you very much. With the help of our marketing and communications team, we created an educational video showcasing this process. This resource has already been used in presentations and communications, and it will continue to be used as an educational resource. Now let's get into the trash talk. The garbage stream revealed that much of the material was divertible, organic, and recyclable waste. What surprised me the most was the 19% increase in contamination since the 2018 audit. Although we've seen an increase in participation from the amount of carts that are set out at the curb and total volume since then, the 2024 composition shows me that there are still plenty of opportunities to reduce the amount of waste that we are sending to the landfill. When assessing cart fullness, about 57 of the carts were full to the brim, 25% were 3/4 full, 13% was half full, and 5% were 1/4 full from a 2-week period. Overall, the residents of the fort collectively sent 4,053 tons of garbage to the landfill, which in weight is equivalent to sending about 30 single-family houses to the landfill. These are some of the pictures of the materials that could have been diverted from the garbage stream. I'd like to bring your attention to the picture on the right, which is what the category of food in container looks like. It's usually food in its original packaging or in a takeout container. This contamination is both common in the garbage and organic stream. There is a misconception that once in the bin, further sorting is taking place, but something like this, even the food waste, would be fully considered contamination and sent to the landfill. Within the recycling stream, we found about 18% of contamination, with an average set out of about 2 to 3 bags and/or cardboard set out at the curb, and about 1,087 tons overall sent to the material recycling facility. Our team is not too concerned about this stream, as Circular Materials will be taking over this program April 1st. However, I did want to see whether our dry and clean materials were being properly prepared and baled to be recycled. And ta-da-da-da, they definitely were. This visit provided administration with lots of insight to be able to reassure residents who had concerns regarding our recycling. Now, within the organic stream, we've seen an increase within participation rate with a lot more cards at the curb than the previous audits. Week 1, we saw 79% of households set out an organics cart. However, only 30% sent out an organics cart during week 2, organics only collection. This tells me 2 things. That 1, perhaps not many households have much food waste on a weekly basis, or 2, many households do not yet know that every April, our bi-weekly organic collection switches to a weekly collection until November. Overall, the residents of the fort sent 2,689 tons of organic material to be composted, which in weight is equivalent to about 200 cruise ship anchors going to the landfill. When it comes to contamination, 7.2% initially does not seem like a significant concern. However, we have to be mindful that these numbers are based on weight, and light plastic, which is the most common contamination in this stream, will get compared to heavy organic material. This is one of the main reasons why I physically wanted to be involved in the audit to see firsthand the amount of contamination that was in the stream and what sort of contamination was the most prevalent. These pictures are just a snippet of what we saw during the audit. When we understand that this amount of contamination is the average from 100 households for a 2-week period, we can imagine that the contamination for a year's worth of organic waste in the fort is quite significant than what is statistically being shown on paper. Furthermore, when I investigated to see whether newer neighborhoods would have similar looking organic loads, it was evident that further communication, education, and accountability is needed. Building on the insights from the waste audit, our goal for this year is to lay a strong foundation for the city to come together with a shared purpose. By establishing citywide goals and measurable targets, we can better prioritize initiatives, better understand progress, and celebrate milestones. We would like to inspire collective action and help residents see the vital role that they play in waste sorting and reducing landfill contributions through tailored feedback and tours to the waste facilities. In the long term, we would like to organize special drop-off events for hard-to-recycle materials to further reduce the volume in the garbage and partner with local businesses for waste diversion initiatives to bring together the entire community.
Okay, sorry, thank you. I was just making some notes there as you ended your presentation. I appreciate that report. Certainly a great technical analysis that we were able to see here. I have some questions of my own. I can imagine this is going to create quite a bit of discussion, so we'll start out with Councillor Macon.
Thank you. It's such a great presentation and so much really good tangible facts that we can give to our residents to help do a better job. My one question is on, you mentioned working with businesses on waste diversion initiatives. So I'm just wondering where we're actually at with multifamily dwellings and business pickup for organics and blue bags. Because I know that for my own business, we put a lot of stuff into the garbage can that doesn't need to go there, but there's no other option. And even there, the only thing that we can recycle is cardboard. So I can change this diversion rate quite, I feel like just my own businesses alone, if we could have those items.
Through the chair to Councillor Macon, to answer part of your question, all of our multi-unit residential properties actually do have access to recycling collection. They can either get blue bag collection services or recycling services through front load. So multi-unit recycling specifically will be taken over by Circular Materials as of April 1st.
So sorry to clarify that. They have it right now? Or
residential,
April 1st.
Yeah, residential properties have access to that right now.
That's interesting because I know somebody who lives in a multi who brings the recycling to my house because they don't get pickup.
Some properties have chosen to not participate, but
see.
It is available to them.
Okay, and so sorry, I cut you off. Businesses.
That's okay. The department, one of our priorities for the next couple of years is to look at ICI diversion initiatives, so industrial, commercial, and institutional facilities. So that would include recycling and or organics. We are working on what that might look like, and if there is a budget recommendation that council should consider, it will be brought forward.
Okay, and just to clarify, do multi-dwelling buildings, do they have organics as well?
They don't, no.
Okay. Will that be coming for those big buildings?
Through the chair, that would be part of the larger ICI diversion strategy. It's pretty straightforward for us to get, a blue bag pickup or front load bin recycling, but it's a whole other strategy and communication approach when you're introducing organics.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. And we'll move on to Councillor Blizzard.
There we go. Thanks for the presentation. Thanks for the very, very detailed audit. There was a lot more information than I ever expected to see, but very good information. I imagine for you guys, that's wonderful information. In some ways, and I guess it's going by the pictures, and you showed more contamination. So I did like the comment in the overall video that there was positives. A lot of people do recycle well, but it's very disappointing for someone to put in, I don't know what that was, an engine part or something into organics. That there's no question there. There's sometimes you have a question of, can I put my cat litter in? And you can go on the app or call somebody and find out, but there's no question that's not organic. That's very disappointing to me that people do this obviously on purpose. So there's a long way to go yet to let people know or let them find out. This is going to help you. This is going to help your children. If you don't have kids, it'll help your extended family. Like, it's all about everyone in the world. And one of the big things I found out, I had a tour of this was quite a few years ago, of the Beaver Hill Waste Management, or whatever they call landfill. And one of the things they said there was when they started pulling out the organics, the pigeons were very sad. They had way less runoff from the landfill and way less birds and rodents and everything coming in because the landfill doesn't have that in there. And I know some people argue, well, it's going to break down. It doesn't. There's no air getting down there. It's not going to help. So separating it out is the way to go. And once you do that, the other thing that this person that was guiding the tour said, it's also way less smelly for anyone and the same holds true for our bins. As soon as we started pulling compost out of our garbage, with one exception, our garbage does not smell. The only issue we now have is diapers. I have grandchildren, one that's at the house a lot, and we actually put in a separate bin so we can make sure it's bagged, because summer especially. But otherwise, your garbage and your recycle won't smell if you pull out those organics. And the organics will smell mainly in the summer, because in the winter they freeze. Find a location where it's not going to bother you, because they're way better. Anyways.
You got a question coming.
I do.
Quick.
Yep,
Excellent.
but this is also discussion, because it's not just questions.
Fine, yeah.
Yes. So I have a few, and again, I'm going to go on this, then I do have questions, and I may need a second round. But one of the things I have with not composting, with our recycle, and this is not your fault here, it's not our city's fault, is the lack of accepting all plastics. Honestly, if all plastic was accepted, I don't think I'd have a garbage bin to put out every week. Like, our garbage, especially in the kitchen, is, opening up that bologna or whatever you're buying, and that can't go into the recycle bin or the blue bag bin. So I wish government would do that more, maybe as we do the, extended producer responsibility. Hopefully that will come into play more, because, we should be able to use saran wrap. It does keep our food longer, to make it more viable longer in the fridge. But then I have to garbage it because it can't be kept, right? Can't go in. Anyways, I do have a couple of questions. So how do we know if a load goes into landfill because it's been contaminated, or is there a way to know, or how do they know? I'm going to ask a whole bunch that, and then you can, or do they even know? They don't know it's contaminated until it's dumped, because it's blindly put in.
Through the chair to Councillor Blizzard. Currently, our contractor is taking our loads to their transfer station to pull out all of the big contaminants so that it doesn't get rejected at the compost facility. So typically when a load gets there and they dump into the compost facility, they have someone there that's looking at the load that's coming through. And if they are seeing a significant amount of contamination, they will stop it and recheck it and send it to the landfill. So
it gets put back into a truck or something and dumped to landfill.
It wouldn't get put back into the truck, but the remaining on that load. So typically within a few seconds, you can already tell just how contaminated the load will be. So if they're seeing significant amount of garbage bags coming out when it's meant to be food waste, it's going to get directed to the landfill. But right now, our contractor is taking that out for us in their transfer station.
And this may be hard for tracking, but going by that, would you know where that is? My neighborhood's going to have a truck that fills this whole street, and if it's contaminated every time it comes, can we actually specifically go to that area going, we need to educate this section more, or do we not know where that is?
So I'm currently working with a contractor right now to identify the areas that need a little bit more attention. So this year we're going to be doing a lot of discussions, and then we'll be able to assess and create a better plan to target that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. If you'd like to chime in on round two, I think we might have a couple rounds here. So, thank you. We'll go on to Councillor Harris.
So this was not of our household bin program, the 3 bins that, or well, the 2 bins and the bags that we pick up, correct?
Yes.
What percent would it compare to what comes into the bins at the transfer station that people are dropping off directly into the bins? Are we auditing those? And if there's a split between our total volume that goes out from both the contractor that's picking up at the residences and, you know, the local bins or bag sort of stuff against what we're sending to the landfill from general garbage, how's that break out in terms of volume?
I have some numbers, sorry, through the chair to Councillor Harris. I have some numbers. Not sure if I'll be able to find it quickly though. So at the transfer station, we sent about 2,592 metric tons. And for a residential area, we sent about 4,053 metric tons. So it's just about 1/3.
Now, is that total for per annum, or is that just for one collection?
Total for the year.
Okay, all right. So do we actually kind of keep an eye on what's coming in the regular waste stream, or is it that's just considered to be, like I was doing some renovations recently, and so I had a bunch of this and that and whatnot. I just took it out and threw it in the bin. None of it was really recyclable, so that we just assume or we accept the fact that it is going to be landfilled from that standpoint because there is no diversion potential. Is that kind of just a normal thing?
Sorry, are you able to repeat your question?
Well, so, you know, the stuff that I took in, you know, I knew it was going to be landfilled. So is there any potential for understanding that? So the people at the transfer station probably look in there occasionally just to see how full the bins are. But what are we doing relative to kind of reducing that element of waste that's coming in, general garbage kind of stuff? Is there a way to deal with that?
Through the chair, there is regional efforts trying to quantify C&D waste, so that's your construction and demolition waste. The bulk of the material coming into the transfer station from Fort Saskatchewan residents is that type of material, luckily. It isn't typically household garbage bags, so that's why we do have a little bit more confidence in this audit, because our transfer station is seeing like those larger loads of, you know, wood waste, things like that. And I will admit, us as a community do not have the ability to deal with that type of material in large quantities alone. So we are looking for regional partnerships to hopefully collaborate on longer term solutions in the coming years.
Okay, thanks. That addresses my questions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the answers. I will move on to Mayor Katcher, and then I'll insert myself with a couple of questions. It looks like we might have a few rounds here. So go ahead, Mayor.
Okay. So a few years ago, and I think you were probably part of this, we received, when they changed what we could accept in the blue bag and that, we received this little brochure, and I have it taped in my garage for Wayne, if he's watching, because he doesn't do it well. But it says on there, if in doubt, throw it out. And I guess my comment on that is, you know, when we're talking about the people who aren't separating, do you believe that you can do any kind of education that they're actually going to do it? Or they're just saying, to heck with you guys, I'm paying for the service and I'm going to throw it out? That's kind of my first question. Is there really an education program where you think you're going to turn these people's minds around?
Through the chair to Mayor Katcher, yes, I do believe that communication education does have an impact. Even for my own experience, sometimes I don't know whether a material is recyclable or not. So sometimes I'll check the apps or I'll do a Google search, and from that information, I'm now able to recycle. So I do think a large part of why we're seeing recyclable plastics in the organics, for example, is because maybe not many people know that that's specifically organics and recycling is different.
Okay, and I guess my next question, and I know we're changing providers. When we change providers to take recycling, are they going to be taking styrofoam, glass, things like the electronics or anything? You know, like so you got a curling iron, you go, oh, I'm not going to drive it out to the transfer station to drop off one thing. What what can we expect?
Through the chair to Mayor Catcher. Once circular material takes over April 1st, there is going to be an expanded list of acceptable materials. Usually it's going to be all flexible plastic, all rigid plastics, but we're still unsure right now what those kinds of materials will be. But we have been told that there will be an expanded list.
Okay, well, that's good news. And I'll do a third question because some people have been talking long. In your report, you've got number 2, conduct periodic cart audits. Aren't you concerned people are going to come after you and, we're going to hear about it on Facebook. People are out stealing their garbage when it's not an actual audit going on.
Through the chair to Mayor Catcher, yes, there is a concern, but I think it's very important work, and our team just has to be tough.
Okay, I'll come in for round 2.
Okay, thank you for that. It's an interesting discussion here. April 1st, are we looking at getting back to recycling? I think I remember when I was a kid, there was 4 or 5 different bins of recycling. We had different sorts of plastic, the bottles and cans, cardboard, glass, and we were extremely diligent about, which was mentioned in the video, about cleaning out jars or food waste and separating those. Is this the direction that we're headed in Fort Saskatchewan to, or is the new provider going to be doing that sorting for our residents?
To the chair. So we're still going to stick to the single stream recycling in your blue bags, but it just means you're going to be able to put a lot more materials in there. They will still expect for it to be dry and clean because it's going to go to the recycling facility. And from there, if anything is contaminated with liquids or food waste, it's going to get tossed to the landfill.
Right, okay, so that'll be sort of facility. Yeah, interesting. I wanted to go back as well to the compost and being used on farmlands. Obviously, microplastics is a huge topic of conversation with ecosystems. Garbage that's getting into streams. I've obviously have the same concern that people aren't going to adhere, and then maybe they won't be catching things, and all of a sudden, compost is filtering down the biological amplification stream right into our food again with whatever composing or half-life of plastic that it has. So what assurance do we have, I guess, that this is being well managed and well taken care of? We can always do our part here in Fort Saskatchewan to make sure that the education is there, but what are the other entities that are managing this doing to ensure that we're being safe?
To the chair, at the compost facility, they have quality control, and they go through certification process to ensure that the final output of their compost is grade A and is high quality. That will then go to the farmers. The ability to reject highly contaminated loads once it comes in, that's the most important part for them. That way they're not shifting out constantly throughout the whole process.
Is AI used right now to sort this and determine what a significant portion of contamination would be? Is that technology that's in place or being developed and incorporated into the compost recycling industry?
To the chair, at the compost facility, not that I know that AI is being used.
Okay. And I like the picture. Thanks for the answers. I like the picture of the shocks and springs, their automotive parts. I think I saw something that it said the heaviest thing you can put in one of these bins before the bottom drops out is a Subaru transmission. So I'm not sure. Hopefully we don't see one of those in there, but interesting that people are doing that locally. All right. Thank you very much. We'll move on to Councillor Rabatoye.
Thank you, Ms. Sophie, for your presentation. It was very informative, and appreciate you and your team for putting the video together. I thought that was really cool. My question is, I'm coming to your comments about week 2 of the organics bin, and that only happened in the summer, right? So is our intention to keep it that way, or are we changing it? Because I assume there will be some sort of cost savings there if it's not being used regularly.
Through the chair to Councillor Abitoye, currently the weekly organics is every spring, summer, and fall. And it is being used, but not as widely used. And I think just some more education in terms of, hey, this is available, and awareness, I think it will be used more often.
So, but what have you heard in terms of, what are we hearing from the community and as with respect to the organics bin? Because I understand that in the summer it's hot, so things start to stink sooner than later. So, but are people saying that they like the week 2, the weekly pickups?
Through the chair to Councillor Abitoye, yes, I do believe that people are appreciating the weekly pickups, especially for yard and waste.
That's true. Yeah, that one. Okay. My second question, because that was like part A and part B. My second question is just regarding the audit recommendations that you mentioned. Is there an associated cost to it, and are there like grants we can apply for that can offset the cost?
Through the chair to Councillor Abitoye, did you mean for contamination?
Yes.
So currently there are no grants available to address contamination. But contamination does have financial impacts. It can impact us, our current operations, just through rejected loads. Rejected loads going to the landfill have a higher tipping fee. It could affect our current contractor who's currently sorting out our contamination. If they're constantly seeing contamination and it increases, we might see some costs being passed on to us. Also, contamination also fosters a reputation. So if we're not addressing it, then when we go to tender for additional services, some contractors or facilities might have a higher bid because they know they're going to have to deal with our contamination.
Right. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Councillor Abitoye. Next in the speaking order is Councillor Kelly. So go ahead, Councillor Kelly.
You bet. Thank you. Now, is my voice clear? Just checking, please.
Yeah, the volume's still a little bit low, but yeah, if you just want to speak up a bit, I think it would help. But
okay, will do, and I'll get my headphones for the next meeting. Listen, thank you for your report. Sadie, were you around in 2018? Were you with the city then? My memories, I don't recall clearly.
Through the chair to Councillor Kelly, yes, I was.
Okay, perfect. Sadie, you would recall that in and around that time frame when plastics became an issue, that it all of a sudden surfaced, at least all of a sudden to myself, that the lion's share of the plastics from the Northern Hemisphere were being shipped to a country or countries in the Southern Hemisphere and then allowed to eventually flow down a river or a stream into the ocean. In other words, there was a huge failure at that particular segment in the recycling plan. So what assurances can you give council that all those nicely baled up plastics that we saw in the photo are actually getting recycled and not shipped off to some country and left to rot in the sun?
Through the chair, those changes that were widely communicated in 2018 were designed to help correct that issue. That's why we did pull back on a lot of the previously acceptable materials, because it came to light that they weren't actually getting recycled. So I would say that was a good step one for North America as a whole to kind of address how we were impacting oceans and ocean plastics. The second solution that we've been advocating for a decade or more in the waste industry is EPR. So the province, as part of this EPR strategy, has included it in a circular economy kind of goal. And the hope is that with this circular economy and EPR, we will be able to process more plastics domestically. So when we have increased capacity domestically, we can allow more plastics to be recycled. We can reduce hauling distances. We can reduce costs, things like that. So it's just the economy of scale and the the local independence and ability to process that material, I think that's going to create a lot of change. So we are halfway there already, but EPR might bring us one step closer to kind of achieving what we're looking for in ocean plastics reduction.
Okay, thank you, Sadie. But my question was, what assurances can you give council that that is not happening now? In other words, these plastics aren't going overseas. They're being handled within Canada, or at least within North America.
I will pass that on to Sophie because she's been doing some research on this.
Perfect, thank you.
To the chair, to Councillor Kelly. When I went to do a visit to Capital Papers, which is the facility we sent all of our recycling to, I had the same question for them. And they mentioned that they did a forensic audit, where a forensic audit is a more comprehensive audit than what we did in the municipality. Basically, the forensic audit tracks exactly where the material is coming from and where exactly the material is going through. And through all of that, they determined that 96.88% of their material is actually being recycled or going to where it is needing to be recycled. When I spoke to the VP of Recovery, the person who gave us the tour, I asked, what sort of materials are you getting that are being landfilled? And his response was that it's actually not really the recyclable materials, it was more materials that were heavily contaminated with food particles.
Okay, thank you. The concern is still, is it being recycled in North America or being recycled in some other country? Can you answer, can you refer to that in your response?
To the chair, through the chair to Councillor Kelly, yes, when I had asked that question, they said that it was proprietary information that they couldn't really reveal where they were sending the material, but they reassured me that a lot of it was going through the local market and most of it is going to the United States.
Thank you. I think that's probably, that's my area of concern still. There can't be that many companies that actually recycle plastic materials, and I fail to see why that would be proprietary. I'd like to suggest that the two of you give some thought to what we could do as a community to ensure that, in fact, our waste, and I guess by extrapolation, the waste in the greater area is actually going to a proper recycle station and not proprietary knowledge. And it occurs to me that one of the things we could do when we initiate contracts with these people, or with these companies, is to have them sign off with some sort of declaration that in fact this stuff is being handled within the confines of at least North America. So I'll leave it with you guys for now. When this comes up again, I'll have the same sorts of questions and we can have another chat. Thanks for your time.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kelly. We will move on to, let me just double check here. I believe Councillor Macon was first in the speaking order, so it's back to you, Councillor Macon.
Thank you. You had maybe alluded to this maybe being a possibility or something like this. Do we foresee being able to do something like Electronic Day? Like, I guess further to Mayor Ketcher's comment about a curling iron or something like that. It seems like Large Pickup Day or Leaf Day, like these are all popular events in the city. Could we do something like Small Electronics Day, or so people know what's coming up? And like, what is it, a cost-effective way of keeping small electronics out of the landfill?
Through the chair to Councillor Macon, we actually accept all of these electronics at the Eco Station already. And we would also accept them at our annual recycling roundup event as well. Beyond that, we haven't really explored that as an option, but it certainly could be. And I definitely think more communication is warranted, specifically on the small electronics piece and how we do accept that on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, because I mean, like, we accept leaves too, right? But people sure do appreciate us coming to get the big lot of them that a couple times a year. My last question is, when do we expect to know what is going to be on this new recycling acceptance list?
Through the chair to Councillor Macon. I have the same question. I know currently through the recent presentation that they're just wrapping up contracts with communities who opted in, and so we should see some more information come through very quickly as EPR is rolling through April 1st.
Awesome, thank you.
Well, thank you. We'll move to Councillor Blizzard. Go ahead.
All right, just a couple more things. The one is, and I think I'll say this one first, just because of what Councillor Macon had said. You know, my daughter lives in Camrose, and she said once a year they have, I don't know what they call it, but I would call it something like a free cycle day, where it's almost like every house has a garage sale, except it's free. So you're allowed to put something on the lawn, and maybe it's not up to us to police, but if you tied it in with, okay, on Saturday you could do this, and Monday we will come around for whatever large item pickup, because it wouldn't be little stuff, but you know, it's a win when somebody puts something, a rocking chair out on the front lawn and somebody else takes it. I would like a rocking chair versus it going to landfill, which obviously people do because you found donatable stuff. So, you know, is that something that maybe we could consider to encourage something like that, a once-a-year event?
Through the chair to Councillor Blizzard, yep, some of our regional neighbors have actually taken that approach. There are a few challenges in terms of kind of residuals lingering for a couple months after the event, but it would be something we could tag on to a large item collection if council wanted to pursue that.
Yeah, I just think it would be a win-win. And yes, I get it. There's always, no matter what you do, there's issues, you know, stuff happens. The other thing is, you know, are we being the example? And we, I mean the city. I know in here, I've got, you know, the washroom I just used had a big bin saying compostables or whatever only. Are we doing that in all city facilities? Having some compost, having a place for blue bags? Because I don't see it everywhere.
Through the chair to Councillor Blizzard, we did do a large-scale rollout to all city facilities to ensure they all had organics in 2019. But I do think some areas have lapsed a little bit. The staff-facing areas, sorry, is what we implemented. The public-facing areas we are still working on. The pandemic kind of disrupted our plans a little bit, but now we're gathering our materials here, and we'll be implementing some more solutions this year, actually.
Yeah, I get that it's a work in process, and I don't know if you'd call us institutional, but we are a big organization. And I remember I was on the Waste Minimization Committee a long time ago, and I know that was one, the C&D and the institutional is very hard to do because of, you know, whether you have a construction site, but I think it is something valuable down the road.
That's everything?
That's everything.
Excellent.
I'm done.
Thank you very much, Councillor Blizzard. And Mayor Katcher has a few more questions as well, and I have a few more in close here. Oh. There we go.
Okay, thank you. So in your presentation, you did say you were thinking of doing different kind of special drop-offs. What do you have in mind? Like, you must have something visualized.
Through the chair to Mayor Katcher, textile is a big one that I think is very possible to pursue. Textile, clothing. Okay. Clothing. I've been hearing recently in the industry that there's a few organizations popping up that will accept undonatable textiles, for example. So it's something that we can definitely look more into and foster some partnerships in that way.
Okay, and that kind of ties into my next one. What impact are the charity bins having with junk and stuff dropped off by them? And are the organizations getting to bring it out to the transfer station or eco station for free? Do they have to pay for it? I know even Twice But Nice, I think they have an opportunity to bring stuff out that can't be utilized, but the charity bins specifically, because we're seeing a whole lot of stuff being dropped off. So what's happening with those, and how's that impacting our station?
Through the chair to Mayor Katcher, the outside of the nonprofits that have a Fort Saskatchewan address, we don't really hear from them very much. If they do have excess waste dumped around their bins, they are paying to dispose of that on our site. Our local nonprofits do get a fee waiver if it's unusual material or unusual amounts that we deem is maybe unnecessary for them to deal with or shouldn't have kind of fallen on their plates. So we do help out the local for those situations.
Okay. Just curious about that because I'm seeing more and more of that happening. So I'm happy if they have to pay for it. Not so happy for the businesses that are taking them in. So I guess the only last comment that I have is way back in the day, now I sound like I'm old, but way back in the day when we have an environmental advisory commission, they used to go into the schools and talk about reduce, reuse, recycle. And that's when things seem to have really started to change the mindsets with the youth. I don't see much happening in the schools anymore when it talks about reduce, reusing, and especially in the homes, because it's sort of like, oh, I've got 3 bins, and if this one's full, I'll throw it in this one. So is there any opportunity to speak to the trustees or the school boards again and maybe get somebody into the schools where we really start hammering home to the students who are our next generation, you know, are going to be putting these carts out and maybe helping their parents being a little more responsible? That's a question.
Through the chair to Mayor Katcher, I'm making my way over there. Part of developing those videos is to be able to show them in school programs and to have more of those educational resources for them. So I hear you, and we're gonna make our way there.
Super, thank you.
That's good to know. Thanks for the questions. Thanks for the responses. I just had a question, sort of clarity and elaboration in regards to the EPR program. The sentence here, I'll just read it. The program will incentivize collection of recyclable materials and make the producers of these materials responsible for their processing and recycling, removing the burden from municipalities. However, there's limited guidance on the materials that could fall into this program. So is there a lot of work to do here? Or where are we at, or where are they at in the process? How organized is ARMA with rolling out this and the guidelines that are going to effectively govern our waste under this program?
To the chair, we haven't heard a lot, to be honest. We do meet with them periodically, but it's typically a one-sided conversation where they're asking for just general information about our community to make sure that they've captured all of the sites they need to collect from. With that being said, their actions are guided pretty strictly by the provincial regulations. So, for example, the regulations state, and I may be off by a couple percentages, but 25% of flexible plastics have to be recycled under EPR. So, flexible plastics are currently materials that we don't accept in our program, like plastic bags, saran wrap, things like that. So, what is their plan to accept 25% of these flexible plastics that are currently not included in our program? So we are just making assumptions based on the regulations that they have to abide by, but we have not received any specific information about how they will approach that or what their acceptable list of materials will be.
Okay, so yeah, and I'm sure we'll receive another report when it comes time in regards to EPR and probably some updates from administration or through yourself before this spring on how that's going to look. So I appreciate your time today. Thanks for the presentation. Thanks for being here, Sophie. You did a great job today, and look forward to more talk of our waste in Fort Saskatchewan as it evolves. Thank you very much. So next item is councillor inquiries, and then we'll take a motion to go in camera. So are there any inquiries? Not seeing any. All right. Would somebody like to move? Councillor Macon.
I'll make the motion that we move in camera for items covered under FOIP.
All right. Please cast your vote. And I'm sure that will be carried unanimously. All right, that completes our open session, and council will now move into close.